Hello students and welcome back to our Analyzing English video series. In this 14th video, we're going to be talking about unlocking conversational English beyond slang and idioms. And what I mean by that is we've talked about in other videos English slang words, how to use them, what they mean, and also idioms or other expressions that we may come across that are more niche or may not be used so commonly, but you might hear. But I want to dive deeper into conversational English skills. How do we develop our proficiency in speaking and in holding conversations? Why is it important? And kind of the tips and tricks that I've found over the years to help you become better at conversational English. So I'm going to dive deeper over these next slides. We're going to run through my thoughts on how do we get better at conversational English as ESL students? How do we develop our skills beyond knowing, vocabulary words and slang and idioms? How do we put it all together to become a more effective speaker? So my name's Ben with English from A to Z, and let's get started. First, understanding the power of conversational English. Now, the key thing that you have to understand is that it is the most important skill set in learning English, even more than listening, reading, writing, and just comprehending what you're hearing or doing with English. The importance of conversational English should be number one on your list when learning the language. Obviously, we want to achieve fluency, but we also want to have a natural flow of conversation. We want to be able to not only hold a conversation effectively, but make it flow, make our vocabulary, make our sentences flow in both casual and professional settings. So we have those everyday conversations, your neighbor, your friends, people you may run into on the street, versus more formal communications, talking to your coworkers, talking to your employer, talking to other people that you work with, just making a presentation as well. We need to be ready for both. So understanding the power of conversational English is not just for everyday use, but for your professional life. And the keys that I would write here, and I've written down for you as well, that I've come up with. These are four main keys to unlocking confidence in both casual and professional English settings. They are questioning, knowing how to form questions, knowing how to respond to people's questions, answering them effectively, understanding what exactly they're talking about, that's key, and then memorizing the flow of a conversation, memorizing how to ask a question, answer a question, state a fact, kind of beginning and ending a conversation. So questioning, responding, understanding, and memorizing. Those are my big four keys to unlocking confidence in yourself in both casual and professional English settings. So the main thing that I want you all to take away is conversational English is very powerful. It can set you apart from other learners. You need to be able to hold a conversation. That's number one in my book. And you need to be fluent eventually or get close to it. You need to have a natural flow in a conversation, and you need to be able to speak, for everyday conversations and formal communications as well. Beyond slang and idioms, practical vocabulary takes precedence. Now, I really harp on words and idioms of the week, but we want to explore the limitations of relying solely on slang and idioms that you hear in media or you hear on the internet for a conversation. They can help you with a conversation, but that's not the end-all be-all. So the true essence of conversational English is having that memorization, having that understanding of natural phrases. Hello, how are you? What's your name? My name is so-and-so. How is the weather today? How are you feeling? How are you doing? Talking about different topics, knowing that everyday vocabulary. And I go over this not to plug my own course, but we cover this in our English for Livelihoods course as well, is just how to use English for daily life and also for your profession, because that's where you're going to hold your conversations in English 90% of the time. You need to build a foundation of core vocabulary and common phrases that you can rely upon each day in your conversations, in your speaking practice. So knowing practical vocabulary, going to the store, asking for a promotion, making a presentation at work, going to the restaurant, going to the movies, talking about the weather, talking about sports. These are the topics that I really emphasize as well in our courses, and also just in our lessons and the classes that we offer. But practical vocabulary in your study should take precedence. And I love my English, slang, and idioms, but that won't get you very far when it comes to holding a conversation. Again, I've talked about this earlier, but questioning, knowing how to ask and answer questions, very key part of knowing how to hold a conversation. Mastering the art of asking engaging and natural questions is super important. Most people, you'd be surprised, never get asked questions. They may be the ones asking the questions, and you can answer them. You should be able to answer them in a conversation. But being curious about the other person or people you're talking to will help you develop your English skills. Knowing how to ask and answer questions is key. And that's what you need to be focusing on when you're unlocking your conversational skills. Developing effective responses, being concise, to the point, informative though, and relevant to the discussion. Asking them relevant questions is key. Asking them questions is good, but it has to be relevant to the discussion. If you're asking them about their project at work, but then you veer off into an unrelated subject, that conversation is not going to be very effective. So you need to make sure you're embracing the flow of a conversation, listening intently, waiting your turn to speak is something I didn't write down, but is key. So having a natural conversational flow and avoiding robotic responses in your responses, I wrote that twice, but in your answers, is key. So following up with questions, understanding what they told you, keeping the conversation going is a really key skill, not just for English learners, but for native English speakers as well. So the art of asking and answering questions should be a key part of your conversational English skill set. Understanding overall tone and context in your conversations. You need to adapt your tone to different situations and audiences. And I brought this up before in the previous video, I believe, but talking to your boss, talking to your family member, talking to a friend, they're all different kinds of situations. And you're going to be talking about different topics with each person. So you need to be able to recognize and respond to visual cues, physical cues, and overall body language to help you drive the conversation. If someone's upset, you need to change your tone. If someone's angry, you need to recognize it. If someone's happy, you can, focus on positive vocabulary. When you're learning the English language, you need to navigate certain cultural nuances that English-speaking cultures have. We go over this in our English for American Culture course, and Cultural English is part of our group class series, to mention our own products, but they do help for practice purposes. But you need to be able to navigate cultural nuances in terms of tone of voice, understanding social expectations, knowing the context and tone of any conversation will serve you well. And lastly, again, knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, what kind of language to use, being formal versus informal is something that's key to developing your conversational abilities. Practice makes perfect, and this is probably the most important slide in this video, but engaging in real-world conversations, you got to get out there. You can't just watch my videos, you can't just take my courses, but you got to there's real value, unprecedented value of regular practice, immersion in real-world conversations. You need to put yourself out there. So in English speaking, you can talk to your teacher, you can talk to a classmate, but you need to be able to find opportunities for conversational practice. Online is great, including on our website. With our tutors is great, but you need to find language partners or friends or family members so you can have real life interactions. That's very important. I recommend practicing your vocabulary in language learning applications, using resources to study your vocabulary, the conversations, practice conversations that are written for you and ones that you write on your own. That's good with speaking and writing practice. But the main thing, you need to build your confidence in holding conversations through consistent practice and feedback from other people, especially native English speakers. And once a week is not going to cut it. You need to be speaking to people every day, every single day when you're learning English. And you need to mix it up. It could be your tutors, could be language partners, but you need to be talking to strangers sometimes. And it could just be at the grocery store, maybe when you're on the line, at the supermarket, or at the let's say at the post office or just at any public place. Usually people will indulge you a little bit. If they don't want to talk to you, that's fine. But try to have real world conversations. Try to get to know people at language exchanges. Try to practice every day. Hold a conversation 5-10 minutes at a time, and you will get better. So practice does make perfect. But you need to be engaging not just online, but in real world conversations. I think that's super key. That's part of unlocking your conversational abilities is practice, practice, practice. Speaking, speaking, speaking. You need to be working with different people, different settings. You need to be practicing, especially with native English speakers, on a daily basis. So thank you so much for watching. I really enjoyed doing this particular video on, in this Analyzing English series, unlocking conversational abilities, because I do talk a lot about idioms and words and slang, but you need to put it all together. So let me go back and just review really quick. So again, understanding the power of conversational English, knowing why it's the most important facet of learning English, why it's important to handle everyday conversations, formal and informal communications in casual and professional settings. You need to study not just slang and idioms, but knowing how to hold a conversation with everyday vocabulary, daily life vocabulary, knowing phrases that are commonly used in English language study, and then building that foundation of core vocabulary and common phrases that you can rely upon and that you're familiar with. Being able to ask and answer questions effectively, knowing how to have good responses ready, keeping the conversation flowing but concisely, making it informative and relevant to this kind of discussion that you're having, avoiding being robotic, measuring your overall tone and context, adapting your tone when necessary to the audience, being aware of body language and how someone's feeling, understanding visual cues, so their eyes, their face and all that, navigating the cultural nuances in the English-speaking world, understanding social expectations related to conversations, depending on who you're talking to. And then lastly, again, practice, practice, practice makes perfect. Language applications, exchanges, talking to strangers, sometimes friends, family, people you want to practice English with, and get feedback from them. That's super important. So again, real world conversations, knowing when to practice and how to practice, using English for professional, personal purposes. Those are all keys to unlocking English conversation. If you enjoyed this video in our Analyzing English series, I encourage you, please check out our other great YouTube videos for learning the entire English alphabet from A to Z, fixing your English grammatical or sentence errors in our Spot That English series to improve your skills. Please also hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, if it was informative to you, if it helped you understand the value of speaking English consistently, knowing how to hold a conversation. Hit the subscribe button as well to follow us on our English from A to Z YouTube channel. If you have any questions or would like to subscribe to our official newsletter, please go to our website, www.englishfromatoz.com/newsletter. Thank you all again so much for watching this important video in our series, and I'll see you soon for another Analyzing English video. Take care now. Bye-bye.